London, Wednesday, August 15th, 1888, midday. The maitre d' keeps eyeballing us as we sit, relaxing with an afternoon highball and a bit of shag. We're a little underdressed and don't quite measure up to the typical patron, but seeing as John went out of his way to get our names on the member list, there's nothing the poor man can do but stare. Strangely enough, the nervous fellow doesn't let up, and before we know it, there's a small crowd of men in black clothes and white aprons pointing and nodding in our directions.
"Look lively, lad,"
Wiggins mutters, setting his glass on the table. Not a second later, the maitre d' appears at our table with a bobby, the silhouette of an imposing fellow lurking behind him, along with a woman wearing dusky colours. "I've looked over half of London for you two," Lestrade interjects as the maitre d' leaves us. We stand, and Wiggins shakes Lestrade's hand as he continues. "See, Mum, I told you we'd find them." The inspector steps aside to present the woman. "Mrs. Diana Enfield, gentlemen." We shake hands, extend pleasantries, and invite them to sit at our table, which they do, save the officer who stands guard over us.
"Just enjoying a day to ourselves, Inspector. How can we be of help?"
"I'm sorry to interrupt your repose, but, well," Lestrade swallows hard and averts his eyes. "It seems Mrs. Enfield's husband has gone missing."
"Missing?"
Wiggins repeats, hanging on the word before continuing.
"I'm sorry, Mrs. Enfield. I'm not sure what the inspector has told you, but our speciality isn't the location of missing persons, I'm afraid. We're consulting detectives in a more definitive variety. That is to say, most typically, murder."
Trying to steady her hands to light a cigarette dancing from her lips, Lestrade leans over and strikes a match. Mrs. Enfield looks to us, a sudden calm falling upon her.
"And this is exactly why I asked, no, demanded, he take me to see you as soon as I learned of your affairs in helping Scotland Yard. You see, gentlemen, my husband's been missing since yesterday, and I just know he's no longer with us. My poor Hugh has been murdered."
"Surely not. Do you have proof of such an accusation, Mrs. Enfield?"
Puffing a cloud of smoke away from the table, Mrs. Enfield continues, her eyes locked on us, her face more confident than if she had been the Queen herself.
"I can feel it in my bones. You see, Mr. Wiggins, I accompanied my husband to open his shop yesterday morning. Not a moment inside, the phone rang, and the instant Hugh answered, he turned white as a ghost. Even so, he said it was nothing, and insisted he open the shop later in the day, and we return home. On the way back, he became increasingly flustered, nervous like I've never seen him. Mind you, we've been married going on 30 years. When we arrived home, he threw my clothes in a bag, along with some money, and ordered me to get out of the flat, to leave London by the afternoon. Head to my brother Gregory's farm in Devonshire and stay there until he calls for me, and not send word to anyone where I am."
Wiggins leans back in his chair and takes a puff on his pipe.
"Well, ma'am, I grant you that's certainly unusual behaviour, but it doesn't speak to murder. A man could become up and do over a good many things."
The woman leans over the table, cutting Wiggins off mid-sentence.
"I tell you, Hugh is dead. I don't know why or how, but I know my husband has gone to Abbey Garden."
She turns to Lestrade, her eyes wet with tears, yet a scowl breaks across her brow.
"You promised me they'd accept the case, Inspector, on account of your men not being able to pursue the matter."
With a nervous smile, Lestrade waves his officer over and motions towards the exit. We stand as Mrs. Enfield departs with the officer, and Lestrade calls out, "And don't worry your blessed heart, Mrs. Enfield. They'll take your case, I assure you." As soon as she's out of sight, Lestrade whips around. "All right, lads, here's the thick of it. I didn't have the heart to tell her, but we had an escapee from Newgate Prison yesterday morning. A horrible bloke by the name of John Morse, but you might recognize him by his street moniker, the Screw. A thief of moderate notoriety, especially among London's underworld." We nod. "This Screw fellow has put away almost 2 years ago, caught red-handed from a heist on Shaftesbury Avenue, mixed up with a missing woman and a stolen safe. Neither ever recovered."
"The connection, Lestrade? Let's have it,"
Wiggins demands somewhat impatiently.
"Mrs. Enfield's husband owns and operates Enfield Lock Company. He's a locksmith, lads. Call it a professional hunch, but I'm positive this Screw is behind Mr. Enfield's disappearance, and though I dare not say it in front of the old gal, this Screw took out an entire wagon crew, single-handedly, while shackled. If he's involved, I fear for the worst."
Wiggins returns to his seat to finish his drink.
"It's a stretch, Inspector. Not a single clue, a lead to pursue, a crime 2 years past, and a man who, for all we know, panicked at the words of a red-hot mistress."
Bankington Textile Mill, Lestrade barks. A haunt known of the screw. I admit it's unlikely he'd return to it after his escape, but if you wanted a concrete lead to start your investigation, there you have it, gents. We have to let ourselves in at 221B. It's one of the rare occasions when Mrs. Hudson is out of the city for a spell. As we enter, an old man entering 223 Baker Street calls out to us.
"Well, I hope that's all over and done with. Really, that Mr. Holmes is a bit eccentric for his own good at times."
"Pardon?"
is all Wiggins can muster.
"Up to one of his fits again, I say. Sounded like a herd of elephants trampling around up there. I could hardly hear myself think, so I went to collect my post."
We nod to the old-timer and proceed inside. When we reach the office door, we see it is slightly ajar. "Holmes!" Wiggins calls out. There is no reply, though this is hardly unusual. Once Sherlock has set his mind to something, it seems the entire world around him disappears. Pushing open the door, we stand flat-footed and gasp. The entire room has been tossed.
"This is no good,"
growls Wiggins. We strain to upright Holmes's desk.
"All this broken glass, these pages torn from the books here, this was the wrath of the devil."
A familiar voice calls from behind.
"I thought it was you. I called from the hansom, but you paid me no mind."
Mr. Watson cuts himself off as he enters the room.
"Oh, my word. What in blazes happened here?"
"Holmes!" Wiggins calls out again, throwing aside a window curtain draped over an overturned chair.
"Save your breath, my good man. Holmes isn't about, which I surmise is a bloody good stroke of luck."
Returning some books and papers to their proper places, Wiggins pauses and looks to Watson.
"Indeed. Perhaps we should get to him straight away and tell him what's happened."
Bending down with a grimace and a shake of his head, Watson retrieves a broken framed photo of him, Holmes, and Mrs. Hudson.
"I'm afraid he's in transit at the moment, returning from Count Charles de Vale's estate in Burgundy. I know he returns tonight, but he never saw fit to inform me of the means or time."
Wiggins stops and surveys the room, slapping his hat somewhat agitatedly against his other hand.
"What is it, old man?"
Watson queries.
"I don't know how, but this mess ties into our current case. I'm sure of it."
"Case?"
Watson sits atop the desk next to Wiggins.
"I didn't know Holmes set you on a case before he left."
"He didn't, John. Inspector Lestrade tracked us down with a bit of urgency. A missing locksmith named Enfield. Something to do with a case 2 years back. I'm sure you haven't heard, but the fellow behind it, that screw bloke, just escaped Newgate."
"The screw!"
Watson exclaims. Without missing a beat, he leaps from the desk.
"The map!"
"Map?"
Watson rushes over to a bookshelf and proceeds to examine a pile of books on the floor. He retrieves one, Animals Lost to History.
Holmes was bloody obsessed with it for a spell. I remember the screw charging into the office, smoking as if he had been set ablaze, his arms and chest covered in burns and a gunshot wound to the back. He collapsed over there in the corner, begging Holmes for help, claiming he had been set up for murder. A map fell from his hat, and the screw's final words were something to the effect of, "If they find it, I'm dead." Ah, here it is, right where Holmes keeps his collection of unsolved leads. Watson withdraws a folded paper from the pages of the book. The map is nothing but a torn section of a common London street map. A handful of areas are circled in red, a few notations of street names and numbers scribbled next to them. As I said, Holmes spent quite a time obsessing over this little parchment. In the end, he concluded it was unsolvable without some other piece of information. For whatever it's worth, if this mess has anything to do with the screw, you can bet this little scrap of paper was what he was looking for. Wiggins dashes out of the room and down the stairs, racing to the neighbour's door. We catch up as he raps repeatedly on the door, and finally the old bloke from earlier appears.
"Did you see anyone leave, sir, after Mr. Holmes's ruckus?"
"Now that you mention it, a mountain of a man left just as I was locking the door here. Didn't get a good look at him, though. He went off in the opposite direction."
As we approach the Diogenes Club, we spy Sherlock Holmes's older brother dashing into a hansom.
"Mr. Holmes!"
Wiggins hollers. The driver gives a whoa to the horses, and Mycroft leans out the door. "By the look on your faces, I see that it's quite urgent." He opens the cab and slides over. "Climb aboard, lads. I'm at your disposal as long as you don't mind a trip to London Bridge." We catch Mycroft up during the ride. Our report concludes just as we depart the cab and make our way across the bridge on foot. "Escaped, you say?"
"Indeed, and we expect that this screw may not stop at the taking of one man. It's our worry he may have had a gripe against your brother. We were hoping you could tell us more about the crime that sent the convict away and Mr. Holmes's role in it. That is, if you remember."
"Not the kind of bloke you want carrying a grudge against you, that much I certainly recall." Mycroft pauses, deep in thought. "I remember Sherlock was quite taken with the crime and the suspect, this screw. Before the conclusion by the court, Sherlock spent considerable time with him. Where my brother is concerned, it's highly probable he took up the man's cause simply for the near-impossible challenge it presented, though I suspect it had more to do with the child the screw saved, Matilda Vanderbilt. A last redeeming deed, if you will. Sherlock's always been soft for any displays of courage, despite a character's other shortcomings." Wiggins taps the back of his fountain pen against his journal, then takes to writing.
"Anything else you can tell us, Mycroft?"
Apparently, after the police ambushed the screw, he slipped through their lines and a foot chase ensued. After dispatching a number of bobbies who tried to stop him, one of the officers let loose a shot that ricocheted into a barrel of gunpowder, causing a series of explosions and a huge fireball. A spooked horse sent a hansom straight into the burning building, trapping a man and his young daughter. It was here that the screw had ample time to escape the law, but instead he rushed into the flames to save the young girl and her father. For his troubles, the lad was rather badly burned and took a parting bullet from the police. I believe it was these very wounds that led to his capture at my brother's office." Wiggins rushes to capture all that Mycroft has relayed, pen scribbling frantically as the three of us stand about the rail of the bridge looking over the Thames. Mycroft, adjusting his tie, continues, "Ironic, isn't it, that where one young woman is saved by this screw's hand, another is lost?"
"Which woman is it that you speak of, Mycroft?"
"That poor Miss Wales' disappearance, God rest her soul. It doesn't take a Sherlock Holmes to know that she'll never be found, alive anyway. Such scandal most often ends in disaster."
"Scandal?"
we both ask simultaneously. "Most certainly. Lord Allen, the gentleman whose home was pillaged, was engaged to an exquisitely beautiful young woman, one Miss Gloria Wales. Of course, the mere idea that a lord would marry a woman outside of society was a scandal in itself, but the supposed affair she had not long before his disappearance, that was the very definition of scandal. It's bad enough to base a relationship on lust, but not being able to keep that lust under control, well, let's just say Lord Allen's shortcomings were the whisper of everyone's lips. The rumour, of course, was that the wedding was to be called off."
"But it wasn't?"
asks Wiggins. "Not until she disappeared the night of the robbery." At the approach of an older woman in formal dress, Mycroft turns to face us directly. "I'll have to bid you farewell. My appointment arrives, gentlemen." We nod as he steps away. Wiggins returns to his journal with a grimace and mumbles into the wind.
Damn, we really should find Holmes. I have a bad feeling about this screw.
The rail, gentlemen. My brother informed me that he would return tonight on the 9 p.m. rail by central London. I'm afraid he wasn't more specific than that. Lestrade slides a file to us from across his desk as though the paper itself is toxic. "I say, London would be a mite better if we could weed out blokes like Mr. Morse. A career criminal if ever there was one. His sheet starts at the age of 9, if you can believe it." He leans in closer and softens his voice. "I'm not insensitive to the abandoned tykes, but growing up in Coram's Hospital doesn't give you a pass to abandon law and order, never mind basic decency."
You seem set that the screw is responsible for Mr. Enfield's disappearance, then.
The inspector sits back and nods. "You mentioned a crime that sent Mr. Morse to prison some 2 years ago. Perhaps we should start there, then?" As the inspector begins, we flip through the file on one John Moss and follow along. 2 years ago, we were called to Lord Allen's estate. His house and safe were broken into, another safe missing, and, the worst of it, a splash of blood was on the floorboards in the hall adjoining the safe room. Wiggins looks up from the paperwork.
The worst of it?
Well, the poor man's fiancée, a Miss Gloria Wales, disappeared on the same night of the robbery. Well, we can't be sure. The assumption is that she walked in on the screw and he killed her.
It says here that one of the woman's rings was found on the floor near the blood.
Aye. Since nearly 24 hours passed between the assumed time of the crime and the screw's capture, we never expected to recover Mrs. Wales' body.
I vaguely remember Mr. Holmes preoccupied with this case. Without a body or a confession, Moss was sentenced on suspicion only.
Lestrade nods. Obviously. He would have been hanged otherwise. He leans back in his chair and clasps his hands behind his head. I'm not surprised Holmes didn't speak more of the case. After all, he failed to find either Miss Wales or the missing safe. After taking up the cause of Mr. Morse directly, he also failed at keeping him out of prison. A slight grin escapes his face. I recall Screw being red-hot at Mr. Holmes when they sentenced him to Newgate. It seems like he put too much faith in Mr. Holmes's ability to get him off. Not that I blame Mr. Holmes, of course. Not even a saint can account for a man who murders, and a woman, no less. Wiggins shuffles through the papers.
It notes here that Holmes asked the court for leniency on behalf of Mr. Morse. Something about his capture while saving a Matilda Vanderbilt from certain death, and a precise declaration that the screw did not kill Miss Wales.
Every prison in London is filled with murderers who claim their innocence. As for the girl, I seem to remember something about a chase after they ambushed the screw off Commercial Street, just off Whitechapel. An accident of some kind put the girl in jeopardy, and Screw did what any decent man would do and saved the lass from certain death. But don't get your knickers all bunched up for that scoundrel. If he hadn't run from the police, that young girl never would have been put in danger in the first place.
Commercial Street, Inspector? Sounds like good luck your men stumbled upon him there.
Luck had nothing to do with it. Lestrade takes the paper from Wiggins and rifles through them until his face lights up. Right here, a small handwritten note at the edge of the pool of blood in Allen's house contained the address and the time of 9 a.m. Figuring he meant to split his ill-gotten gain with a partner in crime, we set up to nab them. Rubbing his chin in thought, Wiggins looks to the window of the office.
The file doesn't mention another accomplice.
We put it to him well enough, but that Screw fellow wouldn't crack and give up anyone else. With hard-lipped fellows like him, sometimes we have to settle for the man we know did the deed and let the little fish slip away.
I guess that only leaves the safe, or should I say safes.
Right. The smaller wall safe was pillaged. Allen reported a missing pearl necklace and a collection of gold brooches, both of which we found on Screw when we picked him up. Put him at the crime without a doubt.
And this other safe?
This is the bloody fun part. The other was a freestanding safe, set within a mahogany cabinet. Hell if the entire safe didn't just get up and walk away, Lestrade chuckles. A crew of men set to stealing the safe would most certainly have left some trace behind. All the signs point to the Screw leaving with it on his own. Now, lads, those Titan safes, specifically the ones from 85 with the heavy 3-tumbler locks, that safe alone was over £300, never mind the coin and gold Lord Allen's assets were locked inside. A small fortune, as I understand it. Mrs. Enfield looks to us from across the table, her mouth agape.
I'm sorry, Mum, but if your husband is in trouble, then we need to ask every question, even the uncomfortable ones. So, pardon me for asking again, but does your husband work with any known criminals?
She tops off her teacups, shaking her head defiantly.
Of course not, of course not.
She chuckles darkly.
A nurse retired and an old locksmith. Not exactly the making of Scotland Yard's most wanted.
Receding back into her chair, she takes a sip of her own tea.
Now, I'm not saying he's a saint, but certainly my Hugh is no conspirator of the criminal world.
Wiggins puts pen to paper in his small journal, then pauses and leans toward Mrs. Enfield.
The only way we can eliminate possibilities is by asking questions, and not a moment before arriving we got word that the most dangerous criminal escaped from Newgate Prison.
Setting her tea down abruptly, Mrs. Enfield arches her back, waiting in anticipation for the name.
And you think this prisoner has my Hugh?
We don't know, Mum. We only know that this John Morse, or Screw as they call him, is one bad bloke.
Mrs. Enfield's attention seems to wander at the mention of the Screw. She slips her hand into her purse and quietly, calmly withdraws a cigarette. She lights the tobacco, looking to Wiggins to continue.
I suppose with a name like that, a life of crime is a foregone conclusion, she shrugs.
Can you tell us more about your husband's profession? His specialities, perhaps? How busy his work has been of late?
Wiggins turns his focus back to his journal, pen still in hand.
Hugh has been at locks and keys since we first met. He's what they call a master keymaker. That is to say, there's not a key he can't replicate or identify. It's quite amusing to see him look at a lock and then pull the proper key from his collection, though these days there's far more trial and error than was when we first married.
And business, Mum?
I'm afraid modern life moves at a pace for the young gentleman. His speciality, as you put it, is called for with less and less frequency. The mechanisms of locksmithing become smaller, more intricate, and much more advanced with each passing year. Hugh always complains everyone wants more modern combination locks that require no keys.
Interesting. So your husband doesn't work on the newer combination mechanisms?
I'll not admit I said it in his presence, mind you, but they confound him. He's had more flustered failures working on those mechanical devils, as he calls them.
She pauses for a moment.
I don't know if it's of any relevance, but my husband was a collector of cuckoo clocks. Over the years, he's built professional relationships with many of London's clockmakers, for whatever that's worth.
A spare key, supplied to us by Lestrade, opens the front door to Mr. Enfield's place of business at 101 Southwark Bridge Road, a modest storefront whose work area is lined with narrow tables and 3 chairs. Locks, keys, and various hand tools of the trade clutter the tables. Above the main work area sits a single framed photo of Diana and Hugh Enfield in their younger days, standing in a rolling meadow. An older man and a third man of about Hugh's age stand alongside them. The entire group posed for the picture with a comfortable, pleasant intimacy about them. A handwritten notation in the corner reads, Diana and Hugh Enfield, Michael and Gregory Upton, 1879, Devonshire. Shelves line the back wall where a single brown curtain sits partially withdrawn against the left corner. Here we see a storage area filled with boxes and the types of raw material expected for such profession. A back door sits locked and chained. Wiggins removes the chain and opens the door, stepping briefly into an unusually clean alley. Returning to the shop, we perform a brief investigation.
Not a thing seems out of place,
remarks Wiggins. Atop one of the desks we find a board of cork with a number of receipts, work orders, and advertisements for various tools tacked in place. The most recent work order is more than 3 months old. Either Mr. Enfield removed the recent orders or work has been slow for a spell.
Well, let us continue our investigation elsewhere.
Wiggins says the words, but lingers and withdraws a paper from the corkboard, an advertisement for the newest model of Titan safes.
Titan? That's the same brand of safe that went missing with the Screw a few years back, I believe.
The flyer is a typical advertisement with no notations or marks.
I don't think Mr. Enfield would mind.
Wiggins folds the flyer neatly and slips it into his vest pocket. We follow the prison guard through a twisting maze of corridors and ascend a flight of iron stairs, eventually ending our journey at a wall of heavy stone block set with a single oversized iron door. The guard smartly unlocks the entrance, calling out as we enter, "Visitors on the floor!" Prison cells line both sides of the hall beyond. To our surprise, the gate doors of all the cells yawn wide open. The prisoners most casually linger about, all tipping their hats and greeting us politely as we pass. Not exactly our picture of the infamous Newgate prison. Our escort chuckles under his breath. "Good fellow hold, lads. The best of the worst, as it were. They enjoy privileges, shall we say, that the rest of the riffraff don't." We stop next to the only cell with a closed door. As the guard rifles through a thick rope hoop of keys, a prisoner mopping the floor pauses momentarily to give us a glance and a nod.
"And who exactly decides which prisoners are the riff and which are the raff?"
The guard throws open the gate with a clamour. "It all comes down to the warden's administration tower, of course, though between you and me I don't reckon the warden walks the prison often enough to know it half as well as us guards." Beyond the bars we find newspaper cuttings cluttering the cell walls. A distant voice calls the guard away, leaving us to inspect the cell on our own. In a short time we discover that nearly all the newspaper clippings showcase one Sherlock Holmes, every employed case that made the paper within the last 2 years, by the look of it. Sherlock's name lies circled or underlined in red wherever it appears with a crude running annotation. Fool, would have got caught sooner, no challenge for the great Holmes, and so on. While most of the newspaper articles focus on crimes, a handful highlight Mr. Holmes in a more private manner. Here the commentary continues, reiterating in brief the nature of each article. This collection of writing lists a number of places Holmes frequents: the Criterion Bar, his office at 221B Baker Street, even his brother Mycroft Holmes. Some details are trivial, like Holmes's preference of red wine over white, yet there are notes scribbled before us. "Knew he was going to give it a run, I did." We turn to see a prisoner mopping lean close to the cell bars. He motions to the adjoining cell and continues without raising his eyes to us. "Old man Gordon came in but a month ago. Nice chap. Guards treated the old-timer like royalty. Thick as thieves, those two became, often talking at night over a smuggled flask of gin, always laughing at the great Sherlock Holmes, London's greatest detective who has the goods on the largest money-safe theft in the last decade in front of him but couldn't find it." It was a boast from the screw that had caught the old man's attention. When the old man asked him to explain, the screw had tightened up and only laughed some more. I overheard them talking about safes the other night. Now that I think about it, they often chatted about safes, but this time the old-timer said he was coming into some money after his release and was going to need someone to put one in. Said he needed something old and reliable, and banks weren't worth a damn. Screw responded that he knew a guy, a locksmith, on the south side. Wiggins steps closer to the mopper.
"A name?"
"Can't say I remember. I do recall he told the man to mention the screw and his friend would set him up right as rain. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The next day, Screw gets up and calls for a guard to ask where the old-timer went. Turns out the old-timer was released, no explanations. Then the guard hands Screw a paper, says it came compliments of Mr. Charles Gordon. A few seconds later, the Screw loses it, calls for the guards, screams it's an emergency. No one comes.
"I don't suppose you got a look at this paper?"
Surely I did. In a fit of rage, the Screw crumpled it up in one fist and threw it through the bars. Oh, I got a good look at it all right. But it was nothing. A page from the Times a couple of days back. I tell you, it was just a bunch of bollocks. Something about the Queen catching a cold, some upcoming banquet, and other nonsense. But there was one thing scribbled in the corner. "We'll be sure to thank Mr. Holmes for his help." We're escorted to the warden's office, where a large man of middle age sits at a desk, nose down to a journal, the pen in his left hand rapidly marking the pages. "Sir William Gross, Newgate warden," the guard announces, motioning us to enter the warden's chamber. Without further word, the guard exits the room, shutting the door behind him. Through the frosted glass on the door, we see that he doesn't leave, but stands at the ready, his back towards us. Standing in greeting, Mr. Gross towers over the both of us. His thick moustache, strong build, and sharp jawline give him more the look of a general population guard than a prison administrator. "I've been informed of your credentials and told your visit today is about Mr. Moss. What would you like to know?" Wiggins nods.
As we understand it, the screw escaped yesterday morning, dispatching the wagon crew during a medical transfer.
With a sigh, the warden shakes his head. Right so. I still don't believe it.
That he was able to escape?
If anyone would be able to, it would be Mr. Morse, but no, gentlemen, I just don't believe he made the attempt in the first place. Retrieving his journal from his coat, Wiggins pauses, his brow wrinkling.
Pardon me, but that seems an odd thing to say. Doesn't every hardened criminal wish to take back his freedom?
Perhaps, but Mr. Morse has always been an exemplary prisoner. That is, after all, why he was set into Goodfellow Hall, the lowest security ward in the prison. Scribbling in his journal, Wiggins continues,
Perhaps a well-thought-out ruse from day one here at Newgate. A feint to gain trust and liberties?
The warden raises his wide shoulders nonchalantly. Wiggins rapidly checks off his own list.
Imprisoned for suspected foul play. A history of violence. Dispatching 4 guards to escape while shackled. Mr. Gross, let me be blunt. We have our suspicions that the screw intends to turn his brutality directly towards our employer, Sherlock Holmes.
The warden leans over the desk with a grimace. Mr. Holmes told you that?
No, sir. We've put it together on our own that the screw is set against Mr. Holmes for revenge on account of his incarceration at Holmes's failed defence.
No, lads, that won't do at all. I think you're on the wrong track with this one, with certainty.
How can you be so certain?
Because I know firsthand that Mr. Morse received very little correspondence during his time here at Newgate. Only one individual sought to write him on the regular, one Sherlock Holmes. Wiggins drops his pen and it clatters to the floor. Gentlemen, as best I understand it, they were quite the confidants. If Mr. Morse indeed held any animosity to Mr. Holmes, it was purposely concealed for many months and papered over with a deliberate respect and camaraderie. I'm not sure what kind of man could undertake such a manipulation for so long, or to what end. We both sit a bit stunned for a moment until at last Wiggins retrieves his pen, returns his journal to his coat, and gathers his things to leave.
One last question, Warden. As we understand it, the screw was in transport to a medical facility at the time of his escape, yet clearly he suffered from no illness. Sir, who was responsible for authorizing the transfer of such an inmate? Did you oversee such matters yourself?
Turning to a drawer in the desk, the warden retrieves a green ledger and begins scanning through the pages. Of course, you understand that during normal times such matters fall under much finer scrutiny, but we are indeed in the grasp of fever. Authorization for medical transfer is more lenient, as it were. His large finger stops in the middle of a page. Here it is. The floorman of the ward made the direct recommendation stating that Mr. Moss showed signs of sickness.
The name?
Inquires Wiggins. Officer Jack Eaton. Arrive at 14 Broken Wharf to find an abandoned textile mill. Entering through the open loading bay, a stale odor of damp cloth assaults our senses. Puddles of water from a recent rain reveal a long-neglected roof. Occasional mounds of soiled, rotting cotton account for the odor. Beyond the carriage dock, we move through 2 large, connected old sewing rooms. Clearly, the location has been abandoned for some time, as nothing remains inside save a few broken work tables, a scattering of old stools, and some wheeled hampers made of moth-eaten canvas and framed with splintered, rotting wood. Beyond the cavernous sewing chambers, we find a number of holding rooms and private offices, all empty. Only outside the last room do we take note of an old jacket hanging on a wall hook next to the window. The more recent remains of a few cigars speckle a rusted tin ashtray. Wiggins holds the coat up to feel the pockets. The garment is smaller than Wiggins's frame. Wiggins comes up with a box of matches, 2 ratty cigars, and a calling card for the Dancing Dobbin pub.
Not much to go on. Well done, Lestrade,
he mutters. Arriving at London Bridge Station, we make our way through the crowds and head straight for the station master's office.
Sorry, gents, I have no notice of Mr. Holmes coming into the station this evening.
Without haste, we turn to leave, but pause as the station master continues.
You know, you're the second party to inquire about Mr. Holmes. Good to see so many people are looking out for his welfare.
The name of the other individual?
I'm afraid I can't recall. Largest fellow I've seen in some time, though. Would need 2 tickets for a comfortable ride on the rail, he chuckles. A steady, well-groomed Mr. Vanderbilt brings us to an upstairs bedroom where his youngest daughter of age 12, Matilda, sits reading.
Matilda, there are some gentlemen here working with the police. They'd like to ask you some questions about your accident.
A well-mannered child, the young girl closes her book, slides off the bed, and stands before us. A particularly small girl for her age, but with the confidence afforded by a wealthy upbringing, she looks to us most directly.
Yes, sirs, I remember it. What would you like to know?
Wiggins can't help but smile at her.
It's about the man who pulled you from the fire.
He kneels down so he can get eye level with the girl.
You know he was a very bad man.
The girl shakes her head, eyes wide.
Oh, no, sir. He was the best man I ever met.
Well, of course he was a good man to have saved you, but did the police tell you that they were chasing him because they think—
Wiggins pauses and looks at Mr. Vanderbilt, who nods. He then looks back to Matilda and continues,
They think that he killed someone during a robbery.
They think?
Asks young Matilda with the shrewd sarcasm of an experienced solicitor. A gruff laugh escapes Wiggins's lips.
Well, true. The man, Mr. Morris, claims he's innocent of the accusation.
Of course, Matilda giggles. He would never do anyone in.
Squinting his eyes with a slight shake of his head, Wiggins asks,
How can you be so sure, young miss?
His eyes, sir. I was frightened the day the carriage caught fire, but the minute I saw those eyes, I knew I would be safe. They looked like my father's eyes.
You mean Mr. Morris's eyes were light brown like your father's?
No, sir. I mean the way he looked at me. His eyes were full of determination. I knew right then he would stop at nothing to help us. A man willing to risk his own life for a stranger, a man like that could never kill anyone.
Mr. Vanderbilt rubs a tear from his eye and motions Matilda back to the bed.
All right, darling, you've done a wonderful job remembering that frightful time.
Stepping outside the room, Mr. Vanderbilt takes care as he closes the door behind us.
I thought it important you hear it from my daughter's lips, but allow me to reinforce her words. That Mr. Morris, or Screw, as I'm told he's known by, really is the most sure example of a selfless man I've ever known.
He pauses for a moment, then motions us follow him down the nearby stairs.
I don't know what trouble he truly got up to that led him to fleeing from the police, but I can assure you the violence and cause of the trouble was all one way, gentlemen. Mr. Morris had no firearm, only the police were shooting. He was intent on fleeing, taking every opportunity to avoid confrontation, as I recall, only resorting to violence when he was cornered. Quite frankly, he had no obligation whatsoever to stop and rush into the flames to save Matilda and myself, and in doing so, he suffered grievous wounds, which eventually led to his capture. If that's not the clearest example of a selfless man, I don't know what is.
Our host guides us to a parlor that speaks to a man of high wealth and status. He had once been a pioneer of cutting-edge frontiers, specifically advanced technological machines for the manufacture of industrial goods and military parts. Now a gentleman in the twilight of his middle age, he looks at us with weathered eyes. A harshness to his bearing is almost hidden behind his beard and his long hair, fastened at the rear of his head with a ribbon. The look of old admiralty, retired and no longer restricted by rule and regulation. Lord Allen takes a deep, deliberate breath as we sit.
Forgive me, gentlemen, but your sudden appearance has brought up unbearable emotions that I have worked hard to suppress for nearly 2 years now.
We understand, sir, and would not have called upon you if the need were not great.
As you explain it, you believe the disappearance of a locksmith has something to do with the murder of my beloved Gloria?
More to the point, to the thief who stole your safes, sir, and was sent away on suspicion of the murder of Miss Wales, the Screw, as he's known.
Scoundrel! Lord Allen spits to the floor. That such vile men live and breathe is an argument against God himself. Lord, forgive me for saying it, and make no mistake, that bastard took Gloria from me. He is a murderer, plain and put. Of this I assure you.
Adjusting his ascot, Wiggins summons the courage to say what's next.
I take it you haven't heard, then, that the Screw has escaped from Newgate?
Lord Allen's eyes don't waver in the slightest, but his lip twitches in the faintest of snarls, an uncontrollable show of disgust.
I was not aware. And so you think this murderer may have taken your man, this locksmith. What was his name?
Didn't say, sir. Do you personally know any locksmiths?
Like most, over the years, I've hired whatever firm gives a fair price and has a reputation of excellence. But to your question, no, gentlemen. I don't know any locksmiths in a personal capacity.
Wiggins takes notes in his journal as Lord Allen lurches forward.
You don't think that devil would return here for any reason? If I'm in danger, I expect the police to do something about it.
No, sir. We have no reason to believe the screw would ever return to the scene of his crime.
Then perhaps you should be visiting with Sherlock Holmes.
We both look at Lord Allen with our eyebrows raised. Watching our surprised faces, he flicks his long lock of hair over his left shoulder and continues.
Of course, I was present in court at that wretch's trial. I never know why Mr. Holmes personally took up his case, but I can assure you when the gavel came down, that murderer looked to Mr. Holmes with eyes ablaze. I can only imagine that with London's greatest detective at work, the fool thought he'd escape, though I guess Holmes's influence did save him from the rope.
Do you mean to say you imagine the screw has it out for Mr. Holmes?
A manservant enters and hovers over Lord Allen's shoulder as he replies,
Most certainly, gentlemen. What is it now, Arthur? Pardon the interruption, sir, but a man from Morton's refrigerator is here about the new icebox. Where's Douglas? Send him to go pick it up. You've already sent Douglas across the river to fetch coal, sir.
Now irritated, Lord Allen waves the servant away.
Then send his brother. Can't you see I'm busy here? If you'll pardon me, sir, we need the icebox for the meat for dinner this Saturday. The man says there's also the matter of payment.
Eyes twitching and skin flushed with anger, Lord Allen rises from his seat.
Apologies, gentlemen, but good help is so hard to come by these days. I will return in a moment.
As our host leaves us, we rise and look about the room. Immediately we're drawn to a large grandfather clock plated with more wealth in gold and silver than most of us make in a lifetime. The maker's imprint at the base, Garamond's clocks, is not known to us, but surely in clockmaker circles he must be regarded as one of the finest in London. Nothing else catches our interest save for a photograph in a unique frame emblazoned with the date June the 11th, 86 in gold foil above it. The woman in the photograph is extraordinary, the very definition of youth and beauty. Her manner and clothing are common, but a necklace about her throat and a gold bracelet set with a single diamond are most remarkable.
My dear Gloria,
whispers Lord Allen, returning and stepping us behind us.
The day we were to be married. A day that was meant to be yet never was. I shall never forget her for as long as I live.
Most unexpectedly, Lord Allen breaks down in tears. We console him, pass him a handkerchief, but he doesn't let up. Eventually he collapses in his chair, sobbing freely.
You don't understand, gentlemen. I'm responsible. Me. Though the wretch did the deed, it was my own foolishness that sent my love to an early grave.
He babbles something unintelligible.
Surely not, old boy.
As I said, good help is so hard to find. I never had the courage to mention this before, but I'm afraid my driver was an accomplice of that screw.
Great Scott, sir! And you didn't tell Scotland Yard? It could have solved the case.
I know, but my grief was so great. You see, shortly after the crime I had a bitter argument with Mr. Marinoff. I can't remember now over what, only that it was trivial, but it was so heated. I fired Evlogi on the spot. With his final payment of employment, I'm told he returned to his home of origin in Bulgaria. Only now, in hindsight, I suspect the argument was his doing. His ploy all along to vacate London as quickly as possible. I'm sure he helped that wretch steal my wealth and ruin my world.
Allen seems truly distraught, his heart raw and exposed.
It was love at first sight, gentlemen. A happenstance meeting at a clock shop, if you can believe it. To have your fate completely upended in such a mundane place. I know society judges me poorly for the relationship, but I would endure the scorn of 1,000,000 times over if it would grant me even a few minutes more with my dear Gloria.
The London Directory directs us to 150 Pancras Road for one Gloria Wales. Obviously, we don't expect to meet Miss Wales, but perhaps a relative or friend, anyone who might give further insight. As we approach our destination, Wiggins keeps mumbling the address.
"Why do I know this address?"
he asks aloud. When we turn the corner onto Pancras Road and step before number 150, we are both reminded. We cross ourselves and step through the cemetery gate.
"Of course. Well, we came all this way. Might as well have a visit."
Small in size, but not in occupancy, it takes us longer than we'd like to find Gloria's stone. As we approach, we see a dark-skinned man with dirty work clothes setting a beautiful bouquet at Miss Wales's headstone.
"Did you know Miss Wales?"
"No, sir," the man says, turning, touching the top of her stone softly before rising to his feet. "Heard she was a beautiful lady, though." The lad fetches up a shovel. "I always pull the new flowers whenever a bad storm rolls in. Not right that someone should set them and they get washed away, even for a ghost grave." Wiggins stands quietly for a moment, then gazes on the grounds.
"You wouldn't know who set the flowers for Miss Wales, by any chance? Her fiancé, perhaps? An older gentleman, Lord Allen?"
Throwing the shovel over one shoulder, the cemetery digger looks at us. "No, sir. Mr. Allen never puts flowers any more. Did regularly right after she was declared dead, but only for a short while. Hardly a month. And never stayed long when he visited." We look at him in anticipation, waiting for him to continue. "I believe the man's name is Roy, sir." He pauses and looks at the ground for a moment, squinting. "Roy Culpepper. That's it, I'm sure of it. He's been coming here regular ever since Miss Gloria arrived. Comes at least 4 times a year. Like most who visit with family and friends here, he'll spend quite the time talking with her, and never fails to bring flowers for her plot." The digger steps over to brush clean a neighboring headstone and pull some weeds. Before we depart, Wiggins calls out,
"Ghost grave? You called Miss Wales's plot a ghost grave?"
The digger responds without looking back at us. "When we put a headstone up, but there's no body beneath the soil. Souls can't rest in peace. Them's ghost graves. Spirits left to wander till they've found right. Not many here, but there's always a few in every cemetery, no matter the size." The digger doesn't want to accept it, but Wiggins insists he takes 3 shillings for his trouble. Walking the halls of 33 Bethnal Green Road, Wiggins has a bit of a nervous coughing fit. The orphanage is a direct reminder of the streets from whence he came, and any fool could see that the visit is not an easy one. Memories of yesteryear are compounded by a modern institution that nonetheless overflows with clientele. There is a flood of small faces of every color, varying in appearance save one common feature, eyes wide with the hope that the visitors this day may be here to save them from their misery. We are brought to a Mrs. Waggard, a heavy-set woman with facial boils and patchy black hairs springing from her upper lip.
"You sure your boys are in the right place? You're looking for a murderer, as I hear it."
"Yes, Directress."
Her face relaxes as Wiggins continues.
"Not that we suspect any of the current children, of course."
The brightness of her eyes fade, replaced with a sudden dreariness. She sighs.
"Who is it, then?"
"John Morris."
Her response is surprisingly quick.
"No, of course."
"You remember him, then, from all those years back?"
It's hard to forget the real troublemakers. Most of our children are just regular kids, mind you, but over the years there's always a few that there's just no helping. I recall little Johnny Moss," she snorts, then continues, "because of the regularity of police visits on his behalf. Oh, nothing too serious, mind you, usually just throwing his weight around, being unnaturally big for his age."
"Prone to violence even at a young age, then, and stealing, I suspect?"
Hence the title, Troublemaker. As I said, there was no helping that one. Though I never suspected him of being a future murderer. He would have been off to a workhouse if not for one of our nurses."
Wiggins leans forward.
"How's that now?"
"What was her name?"
She stares out the window at a drab yellow London sky.
"Diana. That's right. Diana Upton, if I recall. She took a particular liking to that boy. It happens from time to time, one of the staff taking a liking to a particular hard-luck case. Now that I think on it, I recall she almost took the boy in as her own, in an official capacity. Don't remember why she didn't in the end."
We thank the directress for her time and leave the orphanage with haste.
"Lad, I think it's time we reviewed our notes on the case. I believe a drink at the nearest pub is in order."
We arrive at 99 Bishopsgate Street, where we're met by an older gentleman fitting the description of the Screw's prison mate to the letter. After explaining our affiliations, he quickly invites us into a small, humble parlor. The room speaks to a lifetime of hard work, never affording its owner any significant success.
Mr. Gordon,
Wiggins wastes no time.
we're here to discuss your recent incarceration at Newgate Prison. We're particularly interested in a fellow prisoner. We understand you had close relations with a Mr. John Morse.
The old man chews the inside of his lip and looks nervously about the room.
I'm sorry, gentlemen. I can't help you.
Taking a seat, Mr. Wiggins withdraws his pipe and a bag of shag.
We must insist, Mr. Gordon. It's a matter of Scotland Yard, and I'm afraid of life and death.
Sitting directly across from Wiggins, the old man crosses his legs and shakes his head.
No, I'm sorry. You don't understand, gentlemen. You simply have the wrong man.
Wrong man?
Wiggins blurts out, forgetting for a moment the packing of his pipe.
Most certainly. I've never been to prison. Dear me, imagine.
A slight laugh escapes the old man as he knocks on a small wooden coffee table. A bit stunned at the revelation, Wiggins returns his pipe to his coat.
You are Charles Gordon.
Indeed, but I tell you, gentlemen, again, I've never been on the wrong side of the law, ever. Perhaps you're thinking of another Charles Gordon. I suppose there must be more than one in London proper.
Wiggins rises to his feet. There is little defense against such a blatant lie. On the way to the door, Wiggins's eyes dart about, looking for a retort to undo Mr. Gordon's deception, if such a deception indeed exists. There is, of course, the slim chance we might somehow caught the wrong bloke.
Mr. Gordon, I suppose you can account for your whereabouts this past fortnight?
Stepping up to a bookshelf without a word, without pause, the old man retrieves and hands us a small piece of paper. It's a coach receipt for one passenger, round trip, returning from Scotland 2 nights prior, leaving London roughly 7 weeks earlier.
I was away this past fortnight, inspecting parcels for my employer, and before that, Cardiff and Bristol, similarly engaged. I haven't been in London for almost 2 months now.
Wiggins scratches his chin. It's the exact span of time the Screw's old prison mate was inside Newgate.
And your employer will confirm this?
Of course,
Mr. Gordon responds, his eyes slightly enlarged with surprise.
The name of your employer, sir?
Mr. Gordon mumbles something we can't catch, then speaks his employer's name in a flustered whisper. We barely hear it, and Wiggins presses.
Come again?
Clearing his throat, Mr. Gordon blurts out the name, saying it not once but twice in a row.
The Connor Company. The Connor Company.
Exiting 99 Bishopsgate Street, we take to walking down Bevis Marks Street.
Mr. Gordon's story smells riper than week-old fish,
Wiggins proclaims as he finally sets flame to his pipe. While tugging on the pipe, searching for embers, his eyes grow wide, locking onto a large-framed man in a long coat and wide-brimmed hat, shadowing us on the opposite sidewalk. As we stop, he stops, his head directed away from us, a poor attempt to disguise his stalking. Neither of us is armed.
This way, lad,
Wiggins blurts out and rushes to turn the corner. Behind us, the giant of a man leaps into the street, causing hansoms to rear to a stop or careen out of the way onto the curb. One cab fails to stop in time and strike us dead if the man doesn't simply reach out and shove the horse aside, nearly upturning the entire cab. It is here that the giant sprints towards us, crashing through a pile of rubbish and a stack of wooden crates like some sort of wild bull. The obstacles explode around him, not slowing him in the slightest. Ducking around pedestrians, we rush down Bury Street and make a mad dash ourselves across the middle of the road, though the traffic here is far more avoidable. Wiggins moves with the focus and determination of reaching a most specific destination. Behind us, bodies topple to the ground as the figure barrels towards us, uncaring of whatever obstacles may be in his path, gaining on us with each passing moment.
Here,
cries Wiggins, ducking down an alley, a most risky move, as many an alley in London leads to a dead end. A confrontation with the monster at our heels may be nigh. To our relief, it's not a stone-cut wall that greets us, but instead a half-dozen bobbies. Wiggins whistles for their attention, causing half of them to step away from the bank's rear delivery entrance, fearing a robbery. Only then does one of them, an officer named Shelby, recognize Wiggins.
on the sides,
Wiggins shouts, pointing to the depressions on each side of the alley end, large enough to shield a handful of men from view. At Shelby's gesture, the bobbies instantly take up position while Wiggins stands dead center in the alley, feigning a loss of breath. The monster steps into the entrance of the alley on the far side.
Ready, lads?
Wiggins whispers under his breath. But when he looks back to the alley, our pursuer has vanished. Officer Shelby steps up alongside us. "Trouble always seems to be nipping at your heels, hey, lads?" A grave, cold look settles upon Wiggins's face.
"It's not our heels I'm worried about. I'm afraid our pursuer may have been more intent on getting to our employer. If he finds Holmes before us, I dare not imagine it."
A man wearing a sling about his left arm and with a face riddled with stitches answers us at 61 Stamford Street. Jack Eaton steps back and looks away from us as we introduce ourselves. He complains he's not really feeling up to visitors, but after explaining the importance of our call, he acquiesces and allows us to enter. Groaning in pain as he takes a seat, he points to a bottle on a nearby shelf.
"Would either of you mind fetching that bottle of laudanum? The screw really worked me over, and the pain is insufferable."
Wiggins passes the bottle to Mr. Eaton, who proceeds to place 6 drops into his glass of water before taking a sip.
"Though I guess I should count my blessings. With a murderer like that vermin, he could have just as likely left me for dead."
"Did Mr. Morse have help in his escape? As we understand it, you were transferring him into a wagon when he broke free."
"Look at my face. He didn't need any help. That bloke's a freak of nature. Put down 4 of us guards before we knew what happened. Lulled us into a nice false sense of security with his sick routine."
"What sickness is that?"
Taking another sip of his water, Mr. Eaton continues, leaning back in his chair.
"A bunch of bollocks sickness is what it was. I told them not to move that bag of bricks. A man that dangerous should never be let out on any account, especially after what he did to that poor girl, Miss Wales, years back. Never mind his other offences."
"The sickness, Mr. Eaton?"
"Fever, boys. There's been an outbreak of fever at Newgate. We've been dealing with it for the last couple of weeks. Anyone who gets the fever gets transferred out to a ward at Bethlem. The last thing we need is a full-on epidemic in the prison."
Wiggins paces around the room, surveying the landscape, while Mr. Eaton closes his eyes, the effect of the opium taking hold.
"The other guards, transferring the screw, your 3 colleagues."
"All the likes of me, I reckon,"
Eaton responds without opening his eyes.
"But none killed," surmises Wiggins. "I guess it's good he doesn't hold a grudge against his captors."
After a moment, the officer's eyes pop open.
"Oh, but he does hold a grudge, gents. A horrible one, not just against us. Your employer, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, rather, on account of the court finding him guilty despite Holmes's help."
Not finding anything of interest in Mr. Eaton's home, Wiggins steps up before him and replenishes his glass of water from a pitcher.
"Mr. Morse told you of this grudge personally?"
"In his own way, Mr. Wiggins. Don't forget, I'm a guard on his floor. His cell is covered with clippings about Mr. Holmes. I've seen obsession with inmates before. Believe me when I tell you that this screw has it in for Mr. Holmes in the worst ways. You can be sure of it."
A small gathering of older gentlemen pauses and looks at us as we enter the pub at 110 Southwark Street. It's a quiet and peaceful tavern, at least at present. We order a round of pints from the gent behind the bar and take a seat in the far corner, affording us a view of everyone who enters and exits. A lamb stew, loaf of sourdough, and a block of cheddar later, we have nothing to show for our time. When we move to exit the bar, 3 blokes enter at the same time. We think nothing of it until we note the last man in line, the smallest man in the group, has no jacket and chews on an unlit cigar. The fellow pauses and gives us a dirty scowl as we gawk at him. Gathering a round of drinks, the men take up a table near the center of the room. When we approach, the small man nods towards us, alerting the others. "What do you wankers want?" one of his mates queries. Drawing back the sides of his coat and slipping his hands into his pants pockets, Wiggins looked directly at the smallest man.
"Get to Bankerton Textile Mill much?"
The question elicits a laugh from the table. The small man blows a puff of smoke from his cigar towards us. "Do we look like seamstresses?" Again the table laughs.
"Not at all. More like locksmiths, perhaps."
It's a gamble that seems to pay off. The little man jumps to his feet with narrowed eyes. The question seems to have struck a nerve. "What's this all about?" A step closer to the table, Wiggins puts his foot on an empty chair.
Can you account for your whereabouts in the last 24 hours?
The other two men seated at the table jump to their feet, sending their chairs screeching against the tired wooden floors. "I knew they was peelers." The men stalk around us. Wiggins returns his foot to the floor.
Not police, gentlemen. Independent detectives, as it were. But it would be best for you if you just answered the questions. Do you ever do business with the Screw?
All three men hesitate at the mention of Mr. Morris's underworld moniker. The cigar smoker throws up his hand to hold his friends back. "My name is Thomas Turner, detective. As it turns out, I do know a thing about locks. I've been known to pick a few in my time, liberate a safe or two of its ill-gotten gains. But as for this thug, the Screw, we've never heard of him." Thomas proceeds to drop his hand, and all three men continue moving around the table towards us. "To the point where I was yesterday, I've been precisely where I meant to be. Now, I do hope you'll pardon my direct manner when I say it's none of your bloody business." With a fast step, Wiggins backs us toward the front door. Another handful of men gather behind Mr. Turner, holding bottles, blackjacks, and a knife that flies through the air, impaling itself in the doorframe just next to Wiggins's eyes. The entire gang of men rushes towards us. Without skipping a beat, Wiggins retrieves the knife and makes wild defensive swings. The intention is not for actual defense, but for intimidation. The oncoming men pause, searching for an opening through the blade, but by the time it comes, we are already racing down the street towards safety. Wiggins doesn't explain his insistence on visiting 57C Pentonville Road. There's really nothing linking it to the case at hand. That said, one thing we've learned since working under Mr. Holmes is that throwing open a window, even a random one, can sometimes shed unexpected light. The manager of Morton's, a thin, nervous fellow by the name of Mr. Stickley, greets us in the showroom to the store. Surrounded by a modest assortment of the latest iceboxes, he greets us with a slight stutter.
What can I show you this afternoon, gentlemen?
He steps towards an intricately carved wooden box.
Something in walnut, perhaps? Actually, old boy, we're just here to pick up.
The manager looks confused.
I thought you requested to see me directly. Most certainly. We're in a bit of a rush, you see, here to pick up for Lord Allen.
The poor man's frayed nerves unravel further. He pulls a handkerchief to his brow.
Oh, dear, but that's already been picked up. Already picked up?
Wiggins blusters. His acting is superb. With a hard, dry swallow, Mr. Stickley backs up into a walnut icebox, nearly upending a glass pitcher sitting atop it.
Not 2 hours ago. Don't tell me Douglas came ahead of us. He specifically told us Douglas was otherwise occupied. No, the other lad.
With a shake of his head, Wiggins continues the charade.
The smaller fellow, in the bowler? Small isn't a word I'd use to describe either of those brothers. Wish I had lads as big as them on the payroll. They'd save my old back, they would. What was his name again? Yes, Daniel.
Turning and placing his pipe in his mouth, Wiggins's face softens.
All right, then. No harm, no foul. As long as someone picked up the bloody thing, Lord Allen needs the box for an important social event this Saturday.
The manager breathes a sigh of relief.
Please let me know if we can be of service in the future, sir.
A rather robust man, dressed in coat-tails and a top hat and carrying a half-eaten loaf of rye, interrupts our rapping on the front door of 35 Marylebone Road. "Gentlemen, Gerriman's clock shop is closed on account of the owner's brother falling ill in Bavaria. Mr. Gerriman left about a month ago now to tend to him." We tip our hats and thank the gentleman for the info. As soon as he's out of sight, we slip around the alley at the side of the shop.
After coming all this way, I think I'd like to have a look inside.
Stepping up to the side door of the establishment, Wiggins retrieves his trusty black purse. He falls against the lock with 2 picks in hand, but to our surprise, his effort sends the door swinging open. Returning his tools to his jacket, we enter and call out,
"Hello, is anyone present? The back door was left open."
Stepping between a row of shelving cluttered with clockwork, it doesn't take but 2 steps into the back room before the stench of death fills our nostrils. With haste, we throw the gas, strike up the lights, and illuminate the chamber. Nothing but clocks of every size and make and in various degrees of repair fill our view. A number of them lie beneath dusty linen. The shop sits so cluttered it takes us a moment to squeeze through to the far end of the room. Here a large work table bars the way to the only open space in the chamber and a most horrific scene. A slightly overweight male body lies atop the remnants of a splintered wooden chair, pinned between not 1 but 2 money safes. The body lies severely crushed at the hips and chest, where each safe sits embedded in place. The eyes of the poor fellow bulge so far from their sockets that their backsides are visible. Purple bruising appears on the sides of the face, and a trickle of blood pools on the floor about the man's mouth. Finally, we notice the chap's right ankle is badly fractured, with heavy bruising and a small cut, a peculiarity considering that neither safe is anywhere near his ankle, nor could either safe have somehow crushed the ankle and then rolled to its final resting place. Balding, with thick wavy hair about the sides of his head, broken spectacles on the floor, and a swooping mustache, there's no mistaking poor Mr. Hugh Enfield. Environments like Garamond's back room are the detective's nightmare. It's a room filled to the brim with a million intricate parts, any of which could hold an important clue, making it nearly impossible to find. We give the room a once-over, taking note of only one item, or set of items, rather. On the work table near the body lies a wooden 3-tier locksmith's tool chest. The drawers contain numerous skeleton keys, locks, and an assortment of iron hand tools of the profession: pliers, files, picks, bore drills, and so forth. A large 2-handed hammer and a similar-length set of heavy-duty pliers rest against the side of the tool chest. Neither of us is a clockmaker, but these tools seem far too large for that trade.
"Before we call for Lestrade," Wiggins says, crouching next to the body, "let's see if we can confirm our suspicions."
It takes some doing, but we manage to pull a wallet from the body. The contents indeed confirm one Hugh Enfield. Everything looks in order. He even has £3 within. Only one item in the wallet seems out of place, a single playing card, a 5 of diamonds with the center diamond torn out. As we move to exit, a breeze blows through the shop, fluttering the pages of an unseen newspaper on the floor. The paper lies only a few feet from the body, obscured by a wooden shelf. Retrieving the copy of the Times, Wiggins holds it up to the light with a most delicate touch. He points to a few red smudges.
"Whoever held this paper had his hands covered in blood. See here how they encircle the main headline."
In a flash, Wiggins's eyes widen as he reads over the story on the front page.
"Inheritance murder plot foiled by Sherlock Holmes."
The paper is dated 5 years ago.
"This is no random copy of the Times. Someone deliberately brought this paper here. Why they'd want to single out our employer, I can't say, but one thing's for certain. We best find Holmes before the owner of this paper does."
We arrive at 36A High Street, fully expecting Mr. Maranoff to be long gone, as Lord Allen asserted, yet something about the driver's role in the story spurs Wiggins onward. A young woman holding on to a crying infant in one hand and a toddler by the arm with the other answers the door.
"Sorry, gents, I'd like to help, honest. But we've been here not more than half a year. Don't know anything about the previous occupant, Mr. Maranoff, was it?"
We consider questioning her husband, a coal worker for one of the rails, but then the missus opens the front door and motions us in.
"Mrs. Baker, the old woman upstairs. She doesn't like it known, but owns the building, she does. She's got a few bats in the old belfry, but you might get something."
She covers her mouth to stifle a smile, loosing the toddler to race down the hall.
Leaving the woman to her children, we ascend the rickety stairwell and find the upper floor door ajar. A feeble shadow watching as we near rushes to shut the door.
"Mrs. Baker!"
Wiggins calls out, causing the door to creep back open. The frail, hunched-over woman, looking back at us through thick spectacles, barks at us with all the bitterness of a London maid half her age.
"Not buying! Now leave me be. My grandson will be along at any moment, and he won't take kindly to my harassment."
Removing his hat and holding it before him with both hands, Wiggins puts on his best choir boy performance.
"We certainly don't mean to harass you, love. We just had a couple of questions about the previous downstairs occupant, Evlogi."
The door creaks open a bit more.
"Odd fellow, that Mr. Marinoff. Struck me more an undertaker than a driver for London's Better Off."
"Do you ever get the impression that perhaps, how do I say this, that this Mr. Marinoff might have had shady dealings?"
Pulling a shawl around her shoulders against the draught, she looks towards the ceiling for a moment.
"Can't say that I did. Bit of a strange man. A quiet man, always off with his coach like clockwork. I don't suppose those are traits of an illicit man, though these days the city has changed so much I'm not sure you can tell any more."
When Wiggins withdraws his journal and pen, the old woman lunges forward, taking about the forearm.
"He did pay his back rent with a piece of jewellery just before he left, a gold band for the wrist. Had an empty setting for a single stone, but said the diamond was lost years ago. Now, don't get me wrong, tenants pay or try to pay with all sorts of things when finances get tight. I recall it now as you put the questions to me, only because the bracelet fetched quite a bit more than what he owed. At the time, he seemed unconcerned with the discrepancy in value."
"May we see this bracelet, Mum?"
"Would if I could. I sold it right off. Can't take it with you, gentlemen. Can't take it with you."
After a few more questions that receive generic, unhelpful answers, Wiggins paces for a moment.
"I don't suppose you recall the day Mr. Marinoff left the house and moved on?"
"The fingers and knees are gone, gentlemen, but the memory still serves. I remember the afternoon Evlogi left quite well. Took him quite a while to load his coach with all his belongings."
"Do you recall him being in any kind of rush?"
"Just the opposite. He moved as slow as honey in January. Took over an hour to tie down a large crate before stacking just about every one of his belongings atop it. His employer, that Lord Allen fellow, stopped by and had words with him while he worked."
Wiggins interjected with fervour.
"Heated words, Mum?"
"Not at all. Friendly words, I suspect. Parted with a handshake and pat on the back. I remember the whole affair well because of a small trickle of water from the crate left quite the pool by the time Evlogi trotted off."
"Water, Mrs. Baker? Are you sure it wasn't broken bottle of spirits or some other liquid, perhaps?"
"What, you don't think these old eyes know the difference between wine and water?" she cackles. "That ice-cold water blocked the entire walk. Ruined 2 pairs of shoes walking through that mess for nearly a week after."
"Exactly how big was the crate? The size of a piano?"
"Oh, no, much smaller. About the height and length, maybe, but with only the width and depth of 2 or 3 feet.
After thanking Mrs. Baker for her help, we depart 36A High Street and move to flag down a hansom. Something clearly hangs heavy on Wiggins.
"There's something off-putting about her story, lad. I just can't put my finger on what."
As we approach 25 Gordon Square, a clean-cut lad, well laid out, slips from the building and sweeps by us. Wiggins immediately stops and calls out,
"Roy!"
The young man stops.
"Yes?"
His manner is warm and charismatic, his features well-to-do beyond the charms and gifts of mere youth.
"We were wondering if you could give us a moment's time. It's about Miss Gloria Wales."
The energy of the lad vanishes in an instant. Of course," he stutters. "May we walk towards the park, perhaps?" Among the passing foot traffic, we quietly explain who we are and the nature of our visit. Taking a bench just outside the park, Mr. Culpepper stares off in a bit of a daze. "Well, obviously you're here because of our affair. That is, the relationship we had while Gloria was engaged to Lord Allen. I won't deny it, gentlemen. My time with Gloria was the best part of my life, and to hell with whatever the world thinks or says about it." With a reassuring pat on the shoulder, Wiggins continues,
We're not here to judge you, lad. We're just looking for the facts on our case. Sometimes the past has a way of illuminating the future. Now, tell us, we couldn't find any relatives of Miss Wales."
A bit of life returns to Mr. Culpepper's eyes. She was survived by her father, a pleasant old man, a clockmaker specializing in gold and silver work. He was employed at Garamond's clock shop for some years. He turns to look at us. But after a year of waiting, praying for Gloria's return, he couldn't bear it any more. He packed up and left for America to finish off his years with what he hoped would be some measure of peace in a new land. Wiggins sighs.
"I can't imagine losing a child, even were they an adult. I hate to ask, lad, but were you set on the screw? Do you believe he did as they say?"
"I'll tell you what I believe, Mr. Wiggins, that whatever took place was premeditated and more complex than some bumbling robbery. I saw Lord Allen only once, after our affair was discovered, and I never have seen such rage-filled eyes in my life. Perhaps his anger was warranted for our indiscretion, or perhaps our affair only brought a sinister, vile side of a man to light. A man who was far too lacking for the affections of an angel such as Gloria." Mrs. Applegate, the Connor Company secretary at 233 Euston Road, insists that all the gentlemen of the office are unavailable, even for a pair of consulting detectives. As luck would have it, she's otherwise quite pleasant and offers to help if she can. With a slight smile, Wiggins nods.
"Thank you. It's actually quite simple. We're here to verify that a Mr. Charles Gordon is in your employ, specifically that he's been in Western England and Scotland reviewing potential land purchases."
"Gordon?"
Mrs. Applegate's brow furrows. She taps the desk between us with a long, well-polished and coloured nail.
"I don't recall any Gordon."
Wiggins straightens up.
"No?"
he says with a bit of anticipation in his voice. Without further word, our host retrieves a notepad from her desk.
"That's not quite unusual, gentlemen. The Connor Company employs a great many independent men to scour the country for us. I'm not privy to all of them, but this book here, it's our record of men on call."
She takes a moment to review it, finally shaking her head in a dismissive fashion.
"Are you sure?"
Wiggins asks, leaning forward.
"It's quite important that we can be certain."
She checks again and again shakes her head.
"Well, this is interesting. Our Mr. Gordon seems to have lied to us."
Wiggins mumbles under his breath.
"One moment, gentlemen."
We watch as Mrs. Applegate crosses the room and pulls a small metal lockbox from a shelf. She returns to the desk, opens the unlocked box, and proceeds to pull forth a stack of receipts.
"Ah, would you look here? It's the first receipt in the box. £3 to one Mr. Charles Gordon, travel expenses, dated just 2 months prior."
Wiggins deflates into his seat. After a moment, a flash lights up his eyes.
"Mrs. Applegate, if you will, the date on the next receipt directly under it."
Setting the top receipt aside, she responds immediately.
"Yesterday to a—"
Wiggins cuts her off.
"No need, miss. The particulars aren't important, only the date. Thank you for your time."
We rise to leave.
"Just one other question, Mrs. Applegate, if you will. Who has the authority to assign one of your independent real estate men last minute?"
"Oh, any of the directors here at the company, I'm sure."
"And no other?"
She thinks for a moment.
"Well, the owners of the firm, of course, though they rarely get involved in the day-to-day affairs. Like any board, they get together a handful of times throughout the year."
"The names of the owners, if you would?"
"The primary owners, Connor, of course. Stanton, Ellington, Duke, and Allen. There may be owners with smaller holdings in the company, Mr. Wiggins. I'm afraid I don't have access to a comprehensive list."
Taking her hand and giving it a kiss, Wiggins enthusiastically thanks our host.
"That's quite all right, Mrs. Applegate. You've been a great deal of help, a great deal."
At 174 Oxford Street, we ask for a Daniel Browning, and are received by a far younger man than we expect.
"Gentlemen, if you hear about the Rose Tiger, I'm afraid the other papers have all beaten you to the punch, and I'm all interviewed out on the subject."
Wiggins removes his hat and extends his hand as he introduces us.
"Scotland Yard!"
The lad nearly shrieks. Every head nearby turns to us. He grabs Wiggins and whisks us into a nearby room.
"Gentlemen, if there's a threat against the Rose Tiger, London Regional needs to know immediately."
As soon as he closes the door behind us, depositing us in a parlour-like room with a large sitting couch, the lad loses what's left of his colour.
"Mr. Wiggins, I put the stone under contract without my superior's approval. God help me, if I lose this stone, I'll be in the poorhouse for life."
Easy there, old man. We're not here about any threat against your Rose Tiger stone.
The lad melts into the couch with a whistle.
"Thank God."
His brow furrows.
"Then why are you here?"
We're here about a crime 2 years ago. One safe emptied of its contents, another disappeared.
Withdrawing a cigarette case, Mr. Browning pulls a cigarette from it with his lips.
"Gents, I've only been with the company for 11 months.
He smiles as he lights the cigarette.
We realise it's a long shot, but we thought we might inquire if London Regional handled Lord Allen's claim, and even if not, perhaps you might know which company did underwrite him.
Taking a long drag and shaking his head, Mr. Browning responds promptly.
"Sorry, gents. Any information regarding our clients is privileged. Even if I knew, I couldn't tell you. It would get me in all sorts of trouble."
Wiggins promptly rises and heads for the door, a surprisingly aggressive air to his movements.
Understood. We just thought a little professional courtesy might be in order in case we heard about anything regarding your stone from the yard.
The play is expertly executed. Mr. Browning's colour begins to fade again.
Hold on there, gents. You'll forgive my reluctance. It's just been a very overwhelming day. Now, just have a seat and I'll be back in a moment."
About 20 minutes later, the young man returns.
"Unfortunately, Lord Allen isn't handled by our firm."
We rise a second time to leave. Wiggins's face is a bit hard, sizing up whether or not the young lad has just played us for fools.
"But I want you to know I went out of my way to get you the information you needed."
Mr. Browning hastily adds.
"I phoned a colleague who knows the business longer than I. It turns out Lord Allen was reimbursed a significant sum. Nothing ridiculous, mind you, not life-changing money in any fashion, but there is a peculiarity. He had both safes underwritten for the same amount of money. Typically, a freestanding safe will be insured for much more than a small wall safe on account that it can hold much greater value. It's almost as if he didn't want a maximum reimbursement should the safe be stolen or fail in a fire and some such."
Pacing for a brief moment, rubbing his chin, Wiggins abruptly stops and looks at Mr. Browning with narrowed eyes.
Lad, when a large sum of money is claimed in the case of robbery or such, does your firm investigate the matter independent of the police?
"Most certainly, sir. Our men, mostly retired detectives, are quite thorough about such matters."
And you perform similar investigations into smaller claims?
Mr. Browning shakes his head with a look of confusion on his face.
"No, sir. For smaller sums it's not worth the company's time and expense. In these matters our judgment is solely based on reports provided by Scotland Yard."
We thank the lad for his efforts and depart. We have to take up in a queue at Hobbs Lock and Key at 272 High Holborn. A small staff of 3 men buzzes behind the counter, attempting to address everyone with haste. The sounds of filing and hammering and the smell of heated metal fill the room. We wait patiently until our turn at the counter, where Wiggins produces a key and requests it in duplicate. The locksmith turns and rummages through a series of drawers overflowing with keys. "Been like this all morning. Not sure if the news of our unfortunate incident has scared everyone into updating their locks and safes, or if they've come out to support us personally after what's happened. Either way, we're happy to oblige."
Did you lose much in the robbery?
The lad pauses and winces. "Not at all. We don't keep much in the till here, but the truth is they didn't even touch the money. Went straight for some tools. Now, here we are. This one will do." The locksmith slides a paper and pen. "If you'll just write down your address, I'll have it delivered to you this afternoon." Wiggins scrawls the address and passes it back. 221B Baker Street? Why, that's... Wiggins nods.
Indeed. If we could speak to the person who discovered the shop was broken into?
In a few moments we're escorted outside by the eldest man of the group, the owner, William Hobbs. "I'll have to rethink my security," the old man says, staring at the front door and a large metal gate sitting over the side in front of the glass window to the shop. "It's good enough to keep a single robber out, but not a crew of thieves."
How's that, Governor? I don't mean you to reveal any trade secrets, but knowing how the culprits broke in might help our case.
"No trouble at all.
I have to change it anyway. See that plate up there in the corner just above the door? That's a pressure plate attached to a lever inside. It needs 60 pounds of force to release the mechanism. At the same time, this gate can only be lifted up by the latch here. Putting all that effort through one arm above on the plate and having the strength to lift the gate and slide it far enough over to access the door, that's no easy feat. The locksmith shakes his head and throws his hands on his hips. Each morning I open this door, I always need a second pair of hands to help me. There's no way a single bloke could be that strong.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Hobbs. By any chance, do you know the locksmith, Mr. Enfield?
Hugh? Of course I know him. Used to be a fine keyman, one of the best.
Used to be?
Old age, lads. In this line of business, you need a good memory for the more complex mechanisms and a steady hand. I'm not one to spread rumours, but old-timers like Hugh, they just don't have the hands and head for the work anymore. Besides, everything is going to combination locks these days. The future of London is a keyless one, mark my words. Our knocks at 120 Lehman Street are met by a bare-chested man smoking a cigarette, an open tie draped about his neck. His oiled-back hair, bulging eyes, and slightly pointed facial features leave no doubt to the man's identity, one Claude Clay, known on the street as the Rat.
Jesus Christ, you mutton shunters don't let off for a bloody minute. What the hell do you boys want now? Can't you see I'm getting ready to celebrate with a night out on the city?
After correcting Mr. Clay of our affiliations, he continues in a sarcastic tone.
Oh, the great Sherlock Holmes.
The Rat gives a nasal snort.
What a wanker. I got nothing to say to the cops, and I got less than nothing to say to a couple of wannabe cops.
Just a couple of minutes of your time, Mr. Clay. If we must, we'll retrieve Inspector Lestrade and come back in an official capacity, say in the middle of your celebration this evening. I'm sure we can find a cell at Scotland Yard to discuss the matter if you don't wish to answer our questions right now.
Twist. All right, I get it. Fine, come in, chaps. But I've got ladies coming over, and I'm not going to be late on your account.
We step inside and examine Mr. Clay's flat. It's a cut-rate flop at best, but his decorating is a bit interesting, with a handful of high-end art pieces and other collectibles. Stolen, most certainly. Splashing washstand water on his face and examining a blemish in a mirror, he calls out,
Well, you gonna ask your questions or just standing there admiring my beauty?
He grins ear to ear. Wiggins takes a look out the flat window where a large silhouette lingers under the nearest lamplight, looking up towards us.
Actually, we're here about a missing locksmith. Can you tell us where you were yesterday?
Yesterday, gents? They just let me out of Newgate not 3 days ago. Why do you think I'm celebrating my freedom tonight?
Wiggins scowls.
That's not much of an answer, mate.
Really, lads? I had a pint. Was looking for a friend who owes me a few shillings, and came straight home to sleep on my bed, which I most surely missed.
Looking back through the window, the silhouette has vanished.
Can anyone corroborate that?
Sure. The Queen herself and a half a dozen beefeaters were at the pub.
We stare at Mr. Clay, unenthused, and for the first time he fidgets nervously while trying to button his shirt.
No, gents, it was just me, just released from prison. I don't have anyone that can vouch for me, but I don't know a thing about this missing locksmith chap.
Stepping up to Mr. Clay, Wiggins helps him with his tie.
What about the screw? A fellow Newgate occupant. Have you seen him lately?
I was in the holding wards, gents, waiting for the court to finish up my case. I hadn't been put in with the main lads. Is that where the screw is held up these days?
Indeed. Do you know him?
Our paths have crossed once or twice. Similar line of business.
He grins and snorts again.
Then might he have taken our locksmith, perhaps to help him with his business?
Damned if I know. I don't keep track of the screw or his acquaintances. I like my face as pretty as it is, if you know what I mean.
A knock at the door as it opens calls our attention. Two lovely young ladies dressed for a night out in London's finer bars and restaurants blow through.
"Claude, you didn't say you were bringing friends,"
one of the girls whines. The Rat takes one lady under each arm and heads for the door.
Don't worry, ladies. These peelers aren't coming with us. In fact, make sure you lock the door on your way out, gents.
At 15 Tothill Street, a young lad brings us to the auditorium where the renowned Samson performs. The place sits empty save for a handful of cleaners and a man in a suit sitting just in front of the stage. Only when we make our way down the main aisle do we recognize the scope of the rubbish littering the area. The sweepers fill bag after bag with broken pieces of wood, shattered glass, and food scraps, remnants of the recent brawl. The gent in front grunts as we near without turning from his newspaper.
"A brawl that bloody near takes down the entire auditorium, and we hardly get a paragraph in the Times."
He twists the paper in his hands as if to choke the very life from it, then smacks it onto the seat beside him. He looks at us for the first time.
"You can't pay for an advertising opportunity like that. Damn shame. Say, who are you boys?"
We introduce ourselves as consulting detectives currently assisting Scotland Yard and learn the gentleman is one Oscar Turner, Samson's manager.
Mr. Turner, as we understand it, the man who started the brawl with Samson slipped away from the police. Can you tell us exactly how the altercation began and perhaps describe the man?
Sure. Samson was on to his standard routine, but after every feat of strength, some deep-voiced man heckled him. Quite frankly, it happens from time to time. As any stage professional, Samson ignored it, but this bloke just wouldn't let up.
A physical description, if you will?
Asks Wiggins. With a shrug, Mr. Turner continues.
"Oh, I don't remember the specifics. An ox of a man, shorter hair and a jawline you could split firewood on. That's about all I can recall."
He bends down to retrieve a broken chair leg, then tosses it over his shoulder.
Never seen a bloke keep on Samson like he did. Finally, Samson orders him out of the crowd to the edge of the stage and gives it back to him. A clash of quips that ended in a challenge and a bet on which man could best the other in physical combat.
A boxing match?
Waving his hand in a dismissive manner, Mr. Turner shakes his head.
Nothing so civilized, lads. They were both red-hot by the time the words ended. A single boxing glove on the dominant hand of each man. A punch-for-punch contest. No dancing and dodging about a ring.
Wiggins tucks his hands into his pants pockets.
Whitechapel rules? Can't say I would have minded seeing that match.
The lad from the audience gave as good as he took. Samson almost went down more than once, and then the iron hit the floor.
We both look at Mr. Turner with furrowed brows.
"An iron bar just wide enough to be hidden in the hand of a glove," he clarifies.
"Whitechapel rules indeed," hollers Wiggins. "But who?"
Taking up the newspaper from his seat, Mr. Turner crosses his arms over his chest.
"That's exactly why the brawl started. Both men denied it, and supporters on both sides swore the other man held it. In moments it was absolute bedlam. And if you can believe it, in all the commotion, that thick-headed challenger got away with the purse."
Mr. Turner offers nothing else of significance, and we bid him good day. Just off 119 Middlesex Street, we're met by a barrier erected on the steps leading into Market Garden. After paying an admission fee of 1 penny each, we enter a bustling labyrinth of several hundred dealers offering cast-off articles of clothing. Contrary to similar markets throughout London besieged by a wretched aspect of squalor and disorder, the Old Clothes Exchange has a most organized, safe, and friendly ambiance. The seemingly endless rows and racks and tables are flanked by a number of London's well-to-do residents, some of whom actually partake in the trade, allowing visitors of the exchange to enter the ground floors of their home and peruse their own wares for sale. The atmosphere of the market is particularly upbeat this day. The recent donation by a Jewish benefactor is the talk of the exchange. A quick survey reveals that every attendee believes the money will be put to a different use, but all agree the funds will go to make one of London's most beloved markets even better. Our visit to the exchange spans over an hour and a half. We speak to the wealthy and the poor, to sellers and buyers, always keeping a sharp eye out for any large or suspicious-looking characters and an ear out for any street gossip that might be pertinent to our case. On the dull end of it, we find nothing to help our investigation along. On the sharp end of it, we both leave the market with a bundle of new additions to our wardrobe. A significant police presence and a crowd of rail workers greet us at Blackwall Station. Wiggins grabs the nearest rail employee.
"What's this all about, old boy?"
The worker, an older man with a yellowed beard and shaggy eyebrows, responds without turning his attention to the commotion.
"The 9 o'clock threw her brakes a quarter-mile down the track. Not sure exactly why she hasn't come through yet."
The tightness in Wiggins's face vanishes.
"We've got to get to that train and see if Holmes is aboard."
As we make our way to the tracks, the old rail worker calls out to us.
"Holmes? Sherlock Holmes? Indeed he's aboard."
Seizing the man's coat lapels with his fists, Wiggins gives him a rattle.
"How do you know for sure, man?"
"My brother also works for the rail. Rang me from Upminster. Joked about practically bumping into Mr. Holmes. Follows his exploits, the both of us do. If there's trouble, I'll take you down the line."
Snatching the worker's lantern from his hands, Wiggins pats him on the shoulder.
"I'm afraid we have to get to him with utmost haste, old boy."
Stumbling over the tracks to the wooden walkway that runs parallel to the rail for several hundred yards, a few bobbies call out in an attempt to stop us. Wiggins turns and shouts to them as if he's a ranking officer of the yard.
"You men get Inspector Lestrade here on the double and seal off the station. Don't let a soul in or out until you get the all clear."
Not waiting to argue the point, we dash down the gangway, then leap to the tracks where it ends. We race along the line for some way, eventually passing a couple of railmen returning from the train.
"Oi, is there any trouble up ahead?"
shouts Wiggins between breaths.
"Of course there's trouble. The old girl is dead on the iron. Looks like we're going to have to disembark the passengers and take them to the station by foot."
"I only pray we're not too late."
We continue our sprint, the large iron engine coming into view against the wavering lantern light. By the time we reach her, passengers have already detrained. Quite the mob cautiously makes its way towards us on the track. We push through the crowd, shining our light among the faces as we pass. No Sherlock Holmes. As we move to board, Wiggins spies something above us. A shadowy form leaps between the cars, running with speed down the roof of the train. We jump off the steps and rush to pursue alongside the train. Only as we near the last couple of cars do we see a small group of people exit from the last car, moving in the opposite direction of Blackwell Station.
"Holmes!"
Wiggins shouts. The group of 4 men stops. There are 2 smaller lads in front, one behind the other, with 2 much larger blokes standing behind, side by side. Shining his light among them, they all look at us, squinting, trying to shield their eyes from the bright light. All but the second character in line, that is, who keeps his hand firmly on the shiny steel revolver before him.
"Stay where you are, Mr. Wiggins," shouts Holmes. "No need to jeopardize anyone else." "It appears to be too late for that, Mr. Holmes,"
says the man with the pistol trained on Holmes's back.
"Come along, gentlemen."
The voice is a familiar one. When we arrive beside them, we find none other than Lord Allen and 2 giant lads who we can only assume are his manservants, Douglas and David. The boys snatch the lantern from us and twist our arms like freshly kneaded dough. Grips like vices, and with Holmes at their discretion, there is little we can do.
"Sorry, Mr. Holmes, we—"
Now, Mr. Wiggins, don't get ahead of yourself. You'll most surely get a chance to redeem yourself momentarily.
"I must say I'm thoroughly unimpressed, Mr. Holmes. The ease at which we disabled the train and took you into custody, and your men here gave up without a fight.
Well, as I say, I guess I was just expecting something more from London's greatest detective. Now, if you'll come with us, hand over Mr. Morris's map to my missing safe, and then, well, perhaps we can come to an understanding." "The understanding is already complete, Lord Allen. You mean to take the map, then kill myself and my comrades, and arrange the murders in a manner that implicates the screw." A slight grin and nod escape Lord Allen. "I dare say, exactly as you did 2 years ago. I always had my suspicions about you, Lord Allen, and had I but a bit more time, but after tonight, the point is rendered moot, as you'll surely find yourself at the end of a rope." Lord Allen puts his head to one side.
"I don't think so, Mr. Holmes. I believe your days of detective work are rapidly coming to a close." Your arrogance undoes you, sir. We are unarmed and have no intention to run. Now, would you mind lowering your weapon as we cross the tracks? I wouldn't want you to trip and shoot me in the back, accidentally robbing you of your prize." With a scowl, Lord Allen slips the gun into his coat pocket, out of view and hand, but quickly retrievable. To his shock, Holmes takes a fast step backwards. "Thank you very much," he snaps. The scream is deep and guttural. It forces everyone save Sherlock Holmes to freeze in their tracks.
"Murderer!"
A shadow leaps from the roof of the train. Lord Allen has just enough time to look up and gasp in horror, perhaps at the giant of a man barreling down on him, or perhaps recognizing said man barreling down on him. In either case, the screw knocks Lord Allen to the tracks like a sack of wet potatoes, a single shot escaping the pistol and firing harmlessly into the ground. While striking Allen, the screw simultaneously pulls down the lads, holding us at bay. We all rise at about the same time. Holmes leaps to retrieve the pistol, but at the last second Lord Allen comes to his senses and snatches it first. Luckily, he doesn't have a solid grip on it. A struggle ensues. Meanwhile, the rest of us take on Allen's as lads. It's a dirty, spirited fight. Thank God the screw is on our side. He's a beast of a brawler. Lesser lads would be put down in seconds, but Allen's boys are no twigs, and they have something none of the rest of us possess, a resistance to pain and injury granted by youth. The skirmish seems to last forever. Punching, kicking, biting. Then something happens. For some unknown reason, Allen's lads gain the upper hand. We're pinned, being twisted and crushed. We lose track of Holmes, but for us, we're about done. The darkness from lack of oxygen creeps in, accompanied by a piercing ringing in the ears. Only when the bright lights are upon us do we realize that the ringing in our ears is not biological, but the whistling of incoming bobbies.
All right, that's enough. That's enough, I say."
Never have we been so happy to see Inspector Lestrade. A half-dozen of his men wrangle Allen and his boys up against the side of the train. Lestrade paces around, shining his light about.
"Now, hold on. Wasn't there another lad here? The biggest of the lot, I'm sure of it."
Brushing his overcoat clean and retrieving his pipe, which dangles broken in half, Holmes shakes his head. Now, Inspector. Just the night sky and lantern light playing tricks, I suppose. No, I do believe everyone is present and accounted for." We arrive at 150 Bermondsey Street, and if our hunch is correct, the secret location of Lord Allen's missing safe. 150 and its two adjoining neighbors are abandoned and have long fallen into decrepitude. A heavy rusted chain through the front door, locked with a city seal, tells us that the buildings have sat undisturbed for some time. Wiggins looks at the stone landing beneath our feet. He kneels and slides his finger across the dirt surface, revealing a light discoloration.
"As we is, lad, we've done it. These scratches were made by something heavy that was pushed or pulled across the threshold. The exact impressions of a freestanding money safe. It has to be."
Dashing away from the building, Wiggins motions to the far side of the street.
"Perhaps we can kill two birds with one stone. We'll contact Lestrade and have him put a couple of bobbies on the building. See if we can't catch the scoundrel and the safe all in one go."
Blackwall Station leaves little question to the responsible party for the crimes of this case, but let us recall the facts and see if you would have cracked the case without our encounter on the rail. Watson nods.
As you say, Holmes.
With that, we all enter an abandoned building in South London that looks to collapse at any moment. It begins, as I understand it, without a body. Holmes begins. An entire case hung on Lestrade's assumption that the missing locksmith and the escape of one John Moss, a.k.a. the Screw, was somehow connected. Therefore, discovering the whereabouts and motivations of the Screw's escape would prove paramount. Any exploration into Mr. Moss's background reveals the Screw to be a known criminal with a significant history associated with thefts, the criminal underworld, and being convicted on suspicion of foul play for the disappearance of one Gloria Wales 2 years prior. However, Mr. Moss confesses complete innocence of this latter crime. Striking up our torches, we move about on the ground floor, looking at the very definition of dilapidation before us. Holmes continues. On the outset, it would seem the Screw is the best man of interest. As if the case had remained straight and narrow, any able-bodied detective would assert that the Screw did indeed escape prison merely to finish a crime he started 2 years prior. However, another motivation surfaced during your investigation, that the Screw, recently enraged, was not simply intent on retrieving his stolen safe, but instead on assassinating one Sherlock Holmes. As I understand it, my imminent demise may have come to you, perhaps from a fine lad in blue, Jack Eaton. Set among London's incarcerated, day in and day out, one might only see the worst of the Screw, and in Lord Allen, who obviously holds a grudge against Mr. Worse for a wound that will never heal. Yet, had you paid attention to some of the details during your visit to Scotland Yard and your call upon Matilda Vanderbilt, the young girl he saved during his capture after the Allen heist, a far different picture of Mr. Morris's nature would have taken shape. My personal prior involvement with the Screw asserts the implication of the Screw's intent to assassinate me to be a total falsehood, as I will explain in but a moment. But with the contradicting information in hand, you should have asked yourself this. Was it mere accidental deduction on your part that created the false impression upon you, or was the impression of the Screw's diabolical nature deliberate misdirection? For where there is deliberate misdirection, motive is rarely far behind. Remember, lads, there are no such thing as coincidences when it comes to crime and murder. Clearly, with the involvement of a locksmith and the fact of the Screw's stolen safe was never recovered, with a reported significant sum of money within, it's no great leap to realize that someone was intent on recovering the said safe. The only question was, who? We search about the rooms, never wandering too far from one another, always within earshot of Holmes as he continues. A visit to Newgate would reveal insight into the Screw's time spent in prison, where we find him to be an exemplary prisoner, likely a candidate for early release, and not having any issues or trouble. A further contradiction. We can therefore deduce that some outside event took place to upset this harmony of penance. To risk further imprisonment, or even death in an escape attempt, we can surmise that whatever set Mr. Moss in motion created quite the environment of desperation, and here the entire case at hand, for understanding the motivation of this event, puts everything into place. Your visit to Newgate Prison revealed a seemingly unhealthy obsession over me by Mr. Morse, leading to your deduction that he was indeed intent on revenge. But what if I told you, gentlemen, that the Screw had not been stewing in a revenge plot in his prison cell, but simply following my escapades as a detective out of enjoyment? And now, gentlemen, I present to you a fact that no other, even Watson, is privy to. I have, in fact, on a number of occasions, written to the Screw seeking information about certain prisoners and the line on the street for certain crimes among such men. That's right. The Screw not only held no grudge against me, but was actually in my employ, in a sense. Perhaps you are keen enough to deduce this with a visit to Newgate's warden, where he would have revealed somewhat regular correspondence between the Screw and myself. So you see, the thought that the Screw sought revenge against me for his incarceration is pure fiction. Holmes pauses his search, and we all fall back to doorways, allowing us clear sight of each other.
A thief, Watson recaps, caught for stealing a money safe, never recovered, doing his time in prison, politely, quietly, paying his dues to society, biding his time until his release, at which point we can assume he retrieves the safe from the place only he knows where it was hidden and the money within, making his prison sentence palatable. Such a man has a complete change in demeanor and risks everything to escape prison. Not to seek revenge against you personally, Holmes, which we now know to be a falsehood. But what could possibly cause such a man with no living family and no great acquaintances to upheave himself in such a fashion, and with such great risk, as if time itself became an intolerable poison? Watson queries.
There seems to be only one answer, the very connection that set Lestrade to begin the case. The missing safe itself, for if there were no safe, there is no connection to a locksmith.
Excellent, Mr. Wiggins. And so another party has become privy to the safe's whereabouts and intended to retrieve it, robbing the screw of the prize for which he paid with his freedom. Fearing the loss of everything he suffered for, Mr. Moss would attempt to retrieve the stolen safe before it could be stolen out from under him.
"Is there no honour among thieves?"
Watson interjects. Perhaps, for to my greatest pleasure, there was a second motivation to Mr. Moss's urgency. The third party sought the recovery of the safe at any cost, not knowing the location of the safe itself, but learning of a singular piece of map in my possession that contains the safe's location. And after my recent adventures at Blackwall Station, this third party also intended to make a victim out of me, content to further implicate the screw, all the while ensuring that his own crimes of murder and theft went unnoticed. If not for Mr. Morse's steadfast determination, you might very well be looking for a new employer this day. Holmes smiles. As I understand it, Mr. Morse tried on more than one occasion to contact you, but your close proximity with the police and other players in the game made this impossible. Pacing back and forth, Holmes clasps his hands behind his back as he continues. Had these been the only facts at hand, the case would almost certainly have come up to a dead end, but evil men are rarely patient men. The yet-to-be-identified third party took it up to kidnap the locksmith, Mr. Enfield, and here was our scoundrel's blunder that set the entire case against him. Turning his torch against his chest, Mr. Wiggins withdraws his pipe.
I'm not sure, Holmes. It seems perfectly legitimate that the screw would kidnap a locksmith to aid him opening the safe.
Of course, old boy, but why Mr. Enfield? He was an older man, no longer particularly adept at his craft thanks to old age, and most known for producing old keys. If the old chap was critical to the opening of the safe, how could the screw possibly have crushed him to death under two safes, as we unfortunately found in the back of Garamon's clock shop? Watson casually approaches Holmes as if back at the office, nearly falling through a broken floorboard. Rushing to recover himself, he continues almost argumentatively.
"Well, obviously, Holmes, the old man couldn't open the safe, and the screw killed him out of frustrated anger. Or perhaps this locksmith bloke had something to do with the first robbery, and his murder was purely personal."
Holmes dismisses Watson's suggestion with a shake of his head. In truth, I didn't know exactly how Mr. Enfield figured in until I saw the clue you two had discovered on the body. The 5 of diamonds.
"What does it bloody mean, Holmes?"
Watson blurts out in frustration. A most simplistic cipher, really. Had you held the 5 of diamonds over Mr. Moss's map piece against the light, like so...
The circled areas of the map, Holmes. They line up with the cards.
And the numbered notations, equidistant to the middle of the X that the playing card forms. Dare I fall against the cliché, X marks the spot, gentlemen? The midpoint between 100 and 200, 150 Bermondsey Street, exactly where we stand at this moment. Now, let us continue our search and see if we can discover the hidden safe. You see, gentlemen, the screw indeed needed the locksmith to open the safe. Although the older gentleman was not the best safe-cracker, he was, in fact, an old acquaintance of the screw, a trusted confidant, in fact, his wife, Diana Enfield, having been his guardian during his stay in Coram's hospital. Wiggins snaps his finger.
The orphanage, of course. Nurse Diana Upton. Upton being her unmarried name.
Mr. Enfield was not the best solution for a man with all of London at his means, but certainly a solution for a man of limited means such as Mr. Morse. The screw must have given him the cipher to the safe's location. Perhaps he planned to have the locksmith retrieve it on his own time, or perhaps just for safekeeping. Should anything happen to Mr. Morris while in prison, his efforts would not be totally lost. We'll never know for sure.
All well and good, Holmes, but it doesn't get us any closer to who actually killed the locksmith.
Holmes steps over and lights Mr. Wiggins's pipe. Doesn't it? Think, Mr. Wiggins. There are many locksmiths in London, some highly specialized in combination locks and the latest modern technologies. Yet our murderer chose Mr. Enfield, then killed him, and left him with the cipher to the safe's location. Watson flares up in an argumentative manner for a second time.
"Well, obviously, Holmes, the old man couldn't open the safe, and the culprit killed him out of frustration, as I said. Or perhaps this culprit had something to do with the first robbery."
Catching himself, Watson's voice quickly trails in volume as he looks off, scratching his head.
"Wait a moment, that sounds awfully familiar."
Holmes lets loose a good laugh. An older locksmith, specializing in old keys, who knows the man who stole the safe. No, Mr. Wiggins, our murderer didn't choose a locksmith to open the safe. He chose a locksmith to find the safe. You're right that the locksmith and our murderer both had something to do with the original robbery. The locksmith was to help the screw open the safe, and our murderer would most certainly be the man to set up the whole affair, the very man who would have had his own home pillaged, none other than Lord Allen. With a loud huff, Watson rolls his eyes.
Easy to say now, Holmes, after everything that transpired on the rail, but otherwise how could you have made the leap?
Elementary, my dear Watson. Now, let us recall briefly the original crime. The woman who disappeared during the original crime was Gloria Wales, blood found at the scene of the robbery, a beautiful young woman engaged to Lord Allen. It was a scandalous fact that Miss Wales had an affair with another gentleman, Roy Culpepper, shortly before her death. At the original crime scene, I always suspected the screw was innocent of the murder. However, a professional thief with a long history, caught red-handed, I did not have the time to intervene before the courts took to sentencing. I even went as far to visit those circled locations on the screw's map, searching for clues after the fact, but I found none. And most of all, Mr. Morse didn't implicate anyone else in the affair. He claimed not to have killed Miss Wales, but that was it. His lips were sealed. In truth, as time wore on, I was reserved in my investigation. I am certain that poor Miss Wales has been murdered, and I surmise that any discovery of Miss Wales's body would only further incriminate the screw, sending him to the gallows for a crime he didn't commit. Lifting the remnants of a badly rotted painting off the wall while giving a good tug on his pipe, Mr. Wiggins calls out,
"Then how do you declare Lord Allen is behind it now, Holmes?"
"Because of your report, good fellow, specifically of Lord Allen's home, where you noticed a placard of the date that Allen and Miss Wales were to be married, 06-11-86. Recalling that combination to the safe would be a set of 3 numbers, it suddenly came to me that the murderer would have no use of a locksmith to pick a safe if he already knew the combination to it. After a lengthy investigation of a building that desires to collapse upon us at any moment, we regroup in the grand room, defeated and perplexed, until Mr. Holmes shines his torch against the collapsed fireplace that has left a mound of brick over 4 feet high. "Hello, what's this?" exclaims Holmes, stalking towards the rubble. The detective's instincts serve us well, and in no time we extricate a freestanding money safe. Now, shall we see if the theory fits the facts? Holmes enters the combination to the safe, 06-11-86, and it opens. Holmes's eyes flash, and a slight grin escapes his face. Empty, of course. Rising to his feet, Holmes leads us from the perilous building to the safety of the street. Ego let him leave the combination in plain sight. The world may not have recognized the trophy of his crime hanging above the mantel, but Allen would. Every day of glimpsing it, he assured himself that he outsmarted everyone involved, that he got away with murder, and it was only a matter of time before he recouped his missing money, all the while having been reimbursed by his underwriters, paid for committing the murder of his fiancée. Such is the diabolical genius of the criminal mind, and the reason for our vigilance over our beloved city. For if we few do not bring such men to justice, whatever will become of London?